everyone, this is Liz from the Beverly Public Library. Welcome to another episode of STEAM Scribbles, where we explore science, technology, engineering, and math concepts together using just pencils and paper. This week we're going to try drawing together how plants grow. In the spring we see a lot of different plants sprouting up from the ground, so you might think that that's when plants start growing. But actually it starts a lot earlier than that, when a little seed finds its way into the ground. A seed you've probably seen before if you've ever eaten a peach and found a pit in the middle, or if you spat out seeds from a watermelon, or if you found an acorn on the ground. Those are all different types of seeds. And they all look very different, but they all have certain things in common. So a seed will always come from whatever type of plant that it grows into once it's planted in the ground. So for instance, a watermelon seed comes from a watermelon, and if you planted it in the ground, it would grow into more watermelons. A peach would come from a peach tree, and if you planted it in the ground, it would grow into another peach tree and produce more peaches. The second thing that all seeds have in common is that they have a hard outer layer called the seed coat that protects what's inside the baby plant from the elements until it's grown into a full plant. And so what's inside of every seed is called an embryo. The embryo is the baby plant waiting to sprout once it's met the right conditions. And the last thing that all seeds have in common is they all have something called an endosperm, which is kind of like an energy stash for the seeds when they're planted in the ground to help them fuel their growth up to the surface. So since we know that plant growth begins with the seed, the first thing we should draw in our scribbles is our seeds. But before we draw them, let's think about what sort of plant we want to draw. You could draw a tree or a flower or any kind of vegetable will work. If you want to draw fruit, those are usually from a type of tree. So you could do that too, and then add fruit to your trees. Before we start drawing, we think about the plant, and then we think about what sort of seed creates that plant. If you're not sure what your seed will look like for your plant, I have a few examples here for today so to give you an idea of roughly what a seed will look like. And we talked about some examples that you've seen in your life before, but here's some other ones just to help you out. So this is a seed for peas, and you'll notice it is an actual dried pea. The peas themselves are seeds. I bet you didn't know that. So there are some sorts of seeds that we eat. This over here is a seed for butternut squash. If you haven't seen a butternut squash before and broken it open, you've probably seen pumpkins like at Halloween when you carve them. The seeds are a lot like that. Inside, when you open up the pumpkin or the squash in this case, there'll be a bunch of seeds inside that look like this. And this is a flower seed that I'm going to plant in my garden. It's called a zinnia. They look like this. They're very pretty. And you can see the flower seeds quite a bit smaller, but it's got the same kind of oval shape. And that's because the shape of the seed will usually tell you a little bit about how the seed grows on the parent plant that it comes from. So like I said, the butternut squash one grows inside of the squash in little rows, so it grows, this is where it grows out of, and it grows bigger. And the flower seed grows in the center of the flower, and it grows up and grows bigger like that. So they've got this same kind of teardrop shape to them, whereas the pea grows inside of a pod and has a little more space to round out. Okay, so that should give you a little bit of an idea of what some different seeds look like. Now, if you're still not sure what your seed should look like for your plant, it's okay. There's some basic shapes that you can think of for seeds. So we've seen some teardrop shapes, and there's circles. Those are pretty common ones. If you think about how your seed would grow on your parent plant, that should be able to help you figure out the shape. But you can draw one of these basic shapes for now, And then when you're done with your scribble, you should definitely either go outside and try to find the plant that you've drawn, or you should look it up online and take a look at a picture and see where the seeds are on your plant of choice. Once we've decided what sort of plant we're going to draw and we've figured out what the seed looks like, the first thing we're going to scribble is the seed. So you'll want to draw it on the bottom half of your page, whichever way you have it laid out. I'm going to lay it out like this so that I have space to show the plant growing upward and downward. So I'm just going to do a little sunflower. Have you ever seen a sunflower seed? You might have seen them in trail mix before. That's another type of seed that you eat. So it's another oval shaped one and it's brown, which is why I'm using the brown. But again, if you're not sure what color the seed is, that's okay. And if you're not drawing in color, remember that's completely okay too. So now we've got our seed. And the next thing we need to draw is we need to draw the line where the ground is going to be. So I am going to draw it about halfway up the page so there's space to show where the plant grows downward and where it grows upward. And we'll talk about that in just a moment. But first, let's draw that line. Drawing it green to show lots of grass. You don't have to add the grass, but it's pretty. And there we go. And you might look at this and wonder, okay, well, we thought about where the seed came from on the parent plant. How did it get from a parent plant that I don't even see on my scribble all the way down here in the earth? And that's a good question. It's different for each type of seed, but there's a few different ways. One way is the seed might be carried away by the wind to another location and then eventually get buried in the earth by the wind as the wind picks up dirt and moves it around. If you've ever picked a dandelion and blown the petals off, you actually have seen seeds being carried away by the wind because the petals are attached to the seeds. Another way that seeds get moved is some small animals like squirrels like to eat certain types of seeds, like acorns or nuts. Those are types of seeds too. So they like to take them, stash them in the ground, and then dig them back up when they're hungry. But sometimes they forget about the seeds that they buried, and then they've planted the seeds for the plant to grow. And then another way actually is, you know, all of those fruits that we were talking about, like peaches or even vegetables like the squashes and pumpkins that have the seeds on the inside and they have that yummy exterior. Well, lots of animals like to eat those too. So sometimes animals will take their snacks on the go and nibble at them and then just drop the seeds as they're walking, and they've planted seeds without knowing it. So that's how the seeds get moved around. And once the seed finds its way into the ground, it knows when it's time to grow. That's why, remember I said sunflower seeds, sometimes you eat those. You'll find them in like trail mix, mixed in with chocolate chips and other types of nuts. They don't start growing in the middle of the trail mix. You know why? The seeds know when the right conditions have been met for it to grow. So one, a seed needs lots of water, which is not going to be in your trail mix, but it is in the soil. The soil absorbs all of those spring rains that we've had, and the seed can sense that and that it's ready to soak up all of that water from the soil. It also needs the right temperature, which is why a lot of plants don't start growing until it gets warmer out. And then it also needs lots of light. So it can sense when there's a good amount of sunlight in the area for it to start growing. So once all of those conditions are met and the seed is in the ground, it'll start first by planting roots. And the roots always grow downward from the seed, no matter which way the seed is oriented or facing. You could have that oval shape be facing any which way, but always the roots are going to grow down away from the top of the soil into the ground. The seed can sense which way is up and which way is down. That's pretty cool, right? So go ahead and draw lots of roots. And the roots go downward in order to gather up that water from the soil and some minerals from the soil too. But also, the roots are what keep the seed and eventually the plant steady and in place, even when there's high winds knocking the plant about. You can draw as many as you like, but you see that's why we wanted to put the seed a little further up on the page so that we can show all of those fun roots. Okay, and now we have our roots. We're ready to see that plant start growing. The next part we're going to draw is called the sprout. The sprout is basically the baby plant or the embryo that was inside of the seed, bursting out of the seed and growing upward until it breaks through the soil at the top and makes its way up towards the sun, and that's called a sprout. But it'll eventually turn into our plant stem, which we'll talk about in a minute. And this part's important. So remember when we talked about the endosperm, the stash of energy in each seed that helps fuel the plant's growth upward? Well, this is where the endosperm really gets its work done. So when the sprout breaks through the soil up to the top, once it's made its way there, the plant can convert or change sunlight into its food, and that will fuel its growth in future. But before it gets there, the only thing that the seed has in terms of energy is what it has in its endosperm. So the endosperm is really important for this stage of making sure that the plant breaks through the soil and gets to the sunlight energy. Our plants have finally grown enough to start looking like the plants that we see outside, with all of the plant parts that are familiar to us when we go out in our gardens or when we go for a walk. So do you know all the things that you normally see on a plant? One of the first things that we'll need to draw onto our plant are our stems. That's a continuation of the sprout that broke through. If you're drawing a tree, the trunk counts as a stem. And what the stem does is it carries all of the water and minerals that the roots are grabbing from the soil and carrying it upward to the rest of the plant. And then off of our stem, we might have branches that have leaves on them, and the leaves are really important because the leaves are how the plant converts sunlight into energy. You might also on your plant have flowers, and if you have flowers, then you'll first also have buds. Buds are those little green bulbs that you'll see right before the flower blooms that protects the baby flower as it's preparing to blossom. So you can draw some buds and some flowers onto your plant if your plant has those. If your plant is a vegetable, you'll want to add those vegetables onto the plant as well. If your plant is a tree that grows fruit or nuts on it, you'll also want to draw the fruit or nuts somewhere on the tree. Last but definitely not least, we're going to be drawing seeds onto our plants, because every plant will produce seeds that will then get carried off and become new plants, just like our seed did. Now earlier we talked about where the seeds might grow on the plant, and we thought about what shape the seeds might be because of how they grew. So if you remember that, think about where you should put the seeds on your plant, and if you're not sure, that's okay. Just try to think about what makes the most sense, and like I said before, make sure to go search and see where those seeds are after you're done with your scribble. So if you're ready, we're gonna go add in all those familiar plant parts. Remember, there's going to be a stem or a trunk, there's going to be branches, leaves, and seeds, and there might also be vegetables or flowers and buds or fruits or nuts on there. Make sure to add all of the parts that you need for your plant to be done. And let's get scribbling. Scribblers, how did your plants turn out? By now, hopefully your plants look a lot like a plant that you might see outside and should have familiar plant parts. So there's on mine, remember I said I was drawing a sunflower, so there's my stem, and I have little branches with leaves on them. And up here is my flower. It has the yellow petals, and at the center of my sunflower, those little brown dots are all the sunflower seeds that might one day become more sunflowers. What sort of plant did you end up drawing? I'd love to see it, so if you want to, please share your scribbles on social media with the hashtag SteamScribbles. And be sure to tune in next time for another episode of Steam Scribbles. See you next time, Scribblers.